In everyday life, this young woman of 32, whom we'll call Isabelle, is officially a photographer. On this particular day, she's preparing a report on Norman churches. But Isabelle's great passion is gastronomy. The inside of her refrigerator is an invitation to travel.
We have curry pasta from Lion. Here's a beer brought back from Montreal. There's vinegar from Tasmania.
And Isabelle's hobby has even become an ultra-secret side job. 12 years ago, as a student, she applied as an investigator for a famous gastronomic guide to earn a little pocket money.
I sent in surveys of establishments that were already known to the guide to give my opinion and see if they matched, if I wasn't someone who wanted to undermine them, because that's not the point either, if we were more or less on the same wavelength.
Isabelle's culinary expertise, finesse of palate and tone are seductive. After her 3 test surveys, she was hired. Since then, she has visited 100 restaurants a year, sometimes up to 3 a day, following a methodical schedule. The guide she works for awards OCD scores from 0 to 5, i.e., between 10 and 19 out of 20.
We're going to see a very promising young chef. He had OCDs in the 2015 guide. And so, today we're going to check whether it's less. In the end, it was a good experience like that. If it's more, maybe we'll see.
To be more focused, it's without her friends and companion that Isabelle searches for the grail of taste. To preserve her anonymity, we accompany her to the table with a hidden camera. Isabelle behaves like a normal customer. The chef and his staff suspect nothing.
I'll have still water, thanks.
I think I'll do the 4-course menu.
A €45 menu. And since decoration counts towards the final grade, Isabelle waits until the waiter's back is turned before taking a photo of the room. Then, very quickly, she becomes impatient.
I don't have a stopwatch, but when we're beginning to think it's long, it's because that it has to come. Things have to happen like in the theater. In fact, there has to be something going on all the time. Right now, there's nothing. We've had the card for 10 minutes. It would be nice if there was some movement.
A cream of mushroom soup with a smoked air emulsion from the town of Harleux in the Pas-de-Calais.
The amateur Pentagruel takes notes on her electronic tablet. According to her, nothing suspicious.
I prefer to be able to take note of as many things as possible at the time. In every restaurant, I see people eating alone who are on their phones, tablets, or computers. I haven't been asked about that. Are you sure it's not corked? The second bottle. Thank you. I don't mind coming across as annoying. That's the game too. And when you start out as an investigator, you're very difficult. Normally, I'd be called the Terminator anyway.
Hard teeth and a ferocious appetite. Isabelle writes down every dish from 0 to 20, but above all, she tastes.
It's good, it's very fresh, it's well seasoned, well spiced, but not too much so that you can taste the veal. And we taste quite a bit of iodine. But it does season the dish and give it a lively marine touch. Very nice.
The waiter brings dessert.
It's not a headache. It's easy to eat. Several flavors that go well together. You get the feeling that the result is all about pleasure.
After paying her bill, the interviewer is won over.
This lunchtime, the dessert took me to the beach to eat passion fruit with a little cream and coconut. It's a bit like ratatouille. When the critic tastes the ratatouille, closes his eyes and sees himself as a child again, with the smells of the kitchen and all. These are the very good memories we have thanks to this investigative activity.
Isabelle will suggest a third OCD, 15 out of 20. But the final decision will be made in Paris, in the HQ.
There, we have the wall of the magazine that is currently being produced. Here we have the tasting laboratory. There are 12 sommeliers who taste around 50 wines every day. It's a dream job, but at the same time, a very demanding one.
Director of Gault and Millau. Comme de Cherizet heads a team of 18 permanent employees.
Here we have the web part.
The group sells 70,000 copies of the paper guide every year, supplemented by a monthly magazine and a website. Marc Esqueret, a former math teacher, is the head of investigation.
This must be the first guide. In fact, it was the first that was actually called Gault and Millau of France.
In 1974, journalists Henri Gault and Christian Millau decided to compete with the conservative Michelin Red Guide. Gault and Millau launched the concept of nouvelle cuisine light in sauce and reveal young chefs, such as Guy Savoy, Michel Guérard and Marc Vera. For a restaurant, displaying the OCDs of this gastronomic Bible in front of the door would boost patronage by 15 to 30%. But if they are kingmakers, gastronomic guides can also become head choppers. In 2003, chef Bernard Loiseau died by suicide. The restaurateur was mainly afraid of losing his third Michelin star. But he couldn't bear to be demoted either. From 19 to 17 out of 20 by Gault and Millau, which had just published a scathing review of him. At the time, the famous chef Paul Bocuse accused.
I say Gault Millau took part because if he wanted to, why take away 2 points? Because if he wanted to, is it a media stunt? Do we deserve 18? Do we deserve 18 and a half? Do we deserve 19? Do we deserve 20 out of 20? Do we deserve 13? Do we deserve 10? To me, that's very subjective. He said, if one day I lose something, I'll kill myself.
Almighty but decried guides. Emmanuel Rubin is a professional food critic for a daily newspaper. In 2001, he published The Black Book of French Gastronomy. Every month, this professional critic spends 7,000 euros on restaurant bills for his newspaper. He doubts Gault and Millau's reliability and their amateurs.
Well, I'm a mechanic or a banker, and in the meantime my hobby is testing for Gault and Millau. It's not very serious, really. How do the big guides, or supposed big guides like Michelin and Gault and Millau, manage to test? So many addresses over the year with so few people, and so few resources.
As for de Cherizet, he assures us that his guide has the means, and that his 20 investigators each inspect between 50 and 300 restaurants a year.
Of course, our addresses are visited. Of course, we give ourselves 22, 23 months to visit all the addresses. We have 4,300 addresses. So, in 23 months, we visited everything.
So each address is only tested every other year, with the precious help of readers' letters.
In this case, we received an email from an internet user who was disappointed by a well-known restaurant. He wrote to us, I usually consult the guide before each meal, and I'm usually satisfied. But yesterday, what a disappointment. Very expensive for third-rate products, leeks, raspberries, and often not fresh fish pastries. So, for us, it's prompted us to launch an investigation, sooner rather than later.
I'm with Com. We'd like to talk about tomorrow's investigations.
Marc Esqueret calls Sébastien, the Languedoc-Roussillon investigator. He imposes part of his schedule on him, but the interviewer can also suggest addresses that aren't in the guide.
It's one of my suggestions. I've known about it for a while. And then several people I know who are fine gourmets, who appreciate good food, told me about it.
It's a table with potential for 1 OCDs, 0 OCDs, 2 OCDs. You get the idea.
I'll see a potential one.
Okay.
Well, goodbye to you both.
We meet Sebastian in Nîmes, where this 40-year-old gourmet is a bus driver. In 2010, he too applied spontaneously to the guide. Sebastian waited over a year for a reply, which now enables him to realize his childhood dream.
As a child, my parents were big fans of restaurants. I had a habit of carrying a small piece of paper with me where I would write down the dishes and the names of the restaurants. My mother noticed my love for this and bought me the Gault and Millau. And that was kind of my bedside book. I loved reading the conclusions that were drawn about the restaurants. It was very well written. It was a bit like prose and everything. It was very well written. My parents were even more surprised when I told them I was going to join the Gault and Millau and become an investigator. Gentlemen and ladies, next stop is the Citadel Terminus.
Only Sebastian's partner knows about his double activity.
Hello, Chief.
Even his best friend ignores him. At the bus depot that day, he mentions it for the first time.
Pick this up for you this afternoon. That's fine. I'll go with you.
You knew about your bus driver's passion, didn't you?
Not at all. I'm very surprised. I don't know which is the head of the gastronomic investigator. I see it. The wing or the thigh, I see Louis de Funès, but other than that, I don't see how he can be so much blend in with the crowd.
After the bus, the car, Sebastian travels 30,000 kilometers every year for his culinary surveys. He doesn't earn a salary. His bills are simply reimbursed to him between 25 and 80 euros depending on the category of the establishment. If it's over, he pays personally.
My favorite part of the job is tracking down new establishments and new chefs. And why not have a little find? If it goes well, why not include it in the guide?
If questions are suspicious, Sebastian is prepared.
I've always had a cover business, so to speak, so that I could have a valid reason for being in the business.
He even made fake business cards.
Take a few photos of the outside. Photos of the menus so I don't have to do it. Inside. Yes, you need discretion. Be observant. Try not to be noticed.
Sebastian booked under a false name.
I have a reservation for 4 in the name of Soigné, that's me.
The restaurant has a cosseted, traditional and well-kept appearance. The service is relaxed, smiling and very friendly.
No, it's not. No, it's like this.
Depends on what...
For one thing, they've never come to see us. And secondly, for the moment, we're not making the effort either.
Sebastian remains calm, refusing to say it's not the restaurateur's place to approach the guide.
The menu 34 has a lot of little regional connotations. With the starter, asparagus comes back, shellfish with the sea not far away. Fish, fennel, gariguettes, the famous Nîmes strawberries, chocolate shortbread, salt flour. It gives a good first impression. I feel fine.
Asparagus compounds accompanied by a small quail egg and uberic ham.
Thank you.
Enjoy your meal.
But the tasting tarnishes the very favorable first impression.
I like the taste of the mousseline, but it's the greasiness and oiliness that bother me. It combines with the fat of the ham. Too bad. We'll have to wait and see, but for the moment, it's not up to first place.
The cooking wasn't mastered, and the vegetables, in his opinion, were too salty. The dessert, floating with gariguettes, didn't convince Sebastian either.
Average impression. Quality of the gariguettes a little... as if the strawberries had been in the fridge a little too long. Even their flavor isn't very pronounced. And the mixture with the little mint sorbet, which for me is a little strong and completely overshadows the taste of the gariguettes. In terms of presentation, as soon as you break the cookie, everything falls apart on the plate. The cuisine was a little rich, but there were a few minor errors in the service. The knives were used as cutlery for the fish when the bread had been put in place for the dishes. The bread was also forgotten and had to be reclaimed, so for the moment I don't think I'll be able to suggest it for inclusion in the guide.
The gastronomic investigator is disappointed. He hasn't unearthed the nugget he'd hoped for. At the other end of France, Isabelle is about to try out the chic brasserie of a 5-star hotel. The address is prestigious, but last year's table proved disappointing. The challenge is to see if this luxury address has put things right. But the ketchup session quickly turns into a disaster.
It doesn't look easy to eat. It looks a bit greasy. It's not very fresh. The beige on the edges is weird. It's messed up. It's clearly not good. It's hard to go wrong with smoked salmon.
Fish soup seems insipid. Chicken supreme with industrial sauce.
You have to cut yourself well. You have to cut it well so that it's not too thin. It's not pretty. You don't want to eat it. It looks like celery. The potatoes are in a tub of oil. Now we're really in the thick of it. Do we want to come back and eat here again? Do we want to try other dishes? Would you recommend? To whom? Our friends, our friends?
According to Isabelle, for more than 40 euros per guest, the meal is a complete fiasco. We contact the manager of this hotel restaurant by telephone. He pleads extenuating circumstances.
I'll tell you the truth quite simply. Unfortunately, I took over the establishment not long ago, and I don't have a chef at the moment. The chef wasn't very bright, so he left. And I have a team of people who cook but don't have a chef in charge. And inevitably, it's a bit of a tricky time waiting for the future chef to arrive, which is due to take place soon.
The restaurant manager is taking it hard.
That it's not necessarily going to help our business. They're a little bit of a rainmaker. And I would at least have liked the person who came to eat at my place to contact me the next day to give me his impressions.
Isabelle reserves her impressions for the guide's director and spends 3 to 4 hours typing up her report. And her pen is as sharp as her ruthless fork. Although she doesn't receive a salary, she is paid 25 euros for each report.
Even if I made 400 tables a year, I don't think that's enough to live on. So it feeds you. That's true, but the interest isn't pecuniary, that's for sure.
In Paris, Comte de Cherizet and Marcus Kerr receive Isabelle's report via an intranet server.
Well, we have about 20% of the addresses on which we can have debates, 5% on which we can have disagreements, and on which Mark, with the help of the grid, can argue.
Mark agrees to reveal part of this famous grid for the first time.
This grid is secret. It's on 500 points, on something like 80 items. Yeah, this is it. When it's in red, it's a very important item.
The grid sent by Isabelle is dissected by the two directors.
As for the kitchen, we're not there at all. I'd still recommend removing it.
Don't you think that on this kind of table, which are the pivots of the region, i.e. the reference tables of the region, to leave people without an opinion, it's not to encourage them to go astray?
The problem is that we're below 10. Already last year, it was tangent. We had maintained 10 with 0 OCDs. Now, frankly, we're below.
What you can do is write an article in the magazine.
Once again, we've been on
If
top
you're in
at
such and such a place. You explain why you're not on the guide?
And that's it. That's the way it's done. Okay, let's do it that way.
Every year, several restaurants stop being recommended and leave the guide. The number of OCDs of the other establishments tested is re-evaluated upwards or downwards for about 1 address in 5.
25 years old.